Hi, everybody. I believe we should be live on LinkedIn now for our first event. So exciting times. And yeah, I mean, this event all came about because I've been speaking with so many professionals who right now are stuck in terms of kind of what they want to do, where they're at in their careers, and what's that next step for them. Traditionally we've been kind of taught there's one pathway to success. You start in a career, you work your way up, and you spend your life doing that. However, that's all now changed, and it's been like that, I'd say, probably for the last 25-30 years, because we've been in a constant flux of change. There's been market conditions, more globalization, more technology coming out, and there's been more career opportunities that didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago. And that's why I'm here to speak with all of you to kind of get your insights on your career journeys, how that experience has been for yourselves, and what opportunities can now be opened up to other people. So thank you all for joining. Shall we start with Jake? Putting you on the spot, just because I think really interesting career where you've kind of covered lots of different markets. You've been across technology, health and fitness, media, music, food and beverage, and I'm pretty sure that you mentioned to me about how your career started before what's mentioned on your CV.
Well, yeah, I mean, my career probably started back as a 16 or 17-year-old working in bars when I told them that I was actually 21, which you needed to be in them, picking up glasses and things like that. And even though I started university more than once, between the age of 16 and 24, I worked my way through the hospitality trade right up to duty manager and hotel manager, and holding every job under the sun that you could. I then subsequently went to university and did a media marketing degree in communications, and that led me into the music industry because that's where my passion lay. I was DJing, playing in bands, and those things. And so, really, I had this background working in hospitality and music, but not a career as such, and I couldn't see a pathway out of that. So that's why I went back to university and did a media degree. So I ended up working in promotions and marketing at BMG Records.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it was an interesting kind of move, and it kind of aligned with your passions. And then after a few years there, you began your own venture, didn't you?
Sorry, say that again.
You started your own business as well, kind of following that, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah,
actually,
so
sorry, you had a corporate career after that, and then you started your own venture.
Yes. I opened a retail venture called The Cool Store, which was basically a men's emporium in Auckland and New Zealand that had everything from clothing to motorbikes, watches, sunglasses, books, art, anything that was interesting that I could find around the world. And this was very much before the internet had exploded the retail opportunities, particularly to New Zealand. And I absolutely loved it. It was a fantastic opportunity to really express myself and my personality in a business.
Nice. And then from there, because the next move, if I'm correct, was to Les Mills, which kind of transformed your career and where you're located in the world as well. So
yeah, it did.
how did that move actually come about? And was it tough changing industries?
That move came about because the global financial crisis hit our business after only 12 months of being open. So the banks really tightened on their lending to us. So our borrowing capability was really crushed, and that was our operating capital, sort of on a month by month basis. So just to free up some capital for the business, I went, look, I'll get a job, so I'm not drawing out of the business and payments. I went and spoke to the guys at me, and they were looking for someone that had a good brand and product background. So someone's got a chainsaw going, I think. And what that did was it basically gave me a passion for fitness that I'd never had. I played sport at school, but I'd never had a passion for being fit and healthy. And these guys were absolutely insane at Les Mills as far as their passion for health and fitness. And as I said to my wife after being there for about 6 weeks, I said, I think I've joined a cult. Yeah. And the environment is very, very much cult-like. Like everyone exercises, everyone has a good time doing it, and everyone believes in it. And the thing that I loved is you got to feel good about what you were selling and what you were marketing, because there was literally nothing bad that could come out of someone doing an exercise class, really not. So, the transform where I lived. I was originally based in Auckland, New Zealand, and at the time, Les Mills was expanding its owned portfolio of businesses around the world. It had a distribution model, and they were taking back the ownership of it. And the London office was opening, and my wife happened to be from London, so it was a fantastic opportunity for us both to, for me to relocate and for her to return home.
Nice. And I mean, just in terms of kind of making that initial step, because I'm guessing you would have been up against people from the health and fitness industry. So was it, I mean, did you feel like they had any reservations about you, or was it one, what do you feel kind of helped you secure that opportunity?
I think because I had a history in the music industry, so very much trend focused, and then I had the retail background, which was very much trend focused. So, and if you look at health and fitness, it's very trend focused. It's moved a lot more forward in the fact that it relies a lot on science rigor and research now than it did, especially when I started back in. I don't like to think about how far ago it was. I think it was about 2009. But in my time there, we went from being, what we did worked, but they brought in scientists and researchers to prove how good the products were and what they actually did for you over an extended period of time. But people do like to pigeonhole candidates for whatever industries they've been in, and they did sort of question me a bit, because I had no right to be in a health and fitness company. I'd worked in the music industry, I'd worked in hospitality, I'd worked in retail, and I certainly wasn't a regular in a gym. Yeah. So it was and it was kind of like, if they could sell me the job, then I could sell the business, and that's always been certainly later in my career. If I believe in the business, then I can actually get other people to believe in it.
Yeah, and because since then, you've kind of moved across to lots of different industries, and
yeah,
I suppose that question has always been kind of, how do you kind of fit into this role when you've not come from the industry?
For me, it's about, I guess, understanding the product first, the product or the service, whatever it is. And if I can relate to that, because at the end of the day, we're all just selling to human beings, and it doesn't really matter which industry that you've got experience in. If you can understand the product at its basic level and understand why a customer would want it and all the rest of those things, then I think you can bring different experiences into roles. And it is something that I question a lot, why potentially people get overlooked for roles when they haven't been in an industry, because I've noticed people in their careers very much love a vertical. They like to start as a promotions assistant in an industry, and then work their way up in that industry and never get any experience outside of that. And I kind of see that as a bit of an Achilles heel, not having broader experience, understanding how you can possibly do things differently. You tend to get stuck doing the same things over and over if you stay in one industry.
And I suppose that kind of leads naturally to that next question, because you've also been on the other side of the desk hiring for teams. And when you've been hiring, have you preferred people to have been on that industry? Do you prefer people who've got a more varied and broader skill set and industry experience, or would it kind of depend on a particular role?
For me, it's almost capability and attitude. So if someone presents themselves as capable to learn, capable to be not molded, but to absorb and move forward, then I go, great, tick a box, you can learn this. And then it's the attitude. And I look for certain sort of attributes for people to come into teams. And, you know, for example, I hired a law student into a marketing role, and she had absolutely no experience in marketing. And likewise, she was like, you know, I just want to work in marketing because that's what I think I enjoy. And I asked her why. And she was basically an A+ student. She'd got a scholarship, and I was like, she's a really hard worker. She's got the right attributes and she's got the capabilities. So why would I turn down someone like that?
Yeah, I think I like capability and attitude, because I've seen it is quite, if you hire based on CV, it's probably going to be the wrong hire. You know, you need someone who's going to come in, who's going to go that extra mile, especially kind of within these industries where it's not a typical 9 to 5. As much as everybody thinks marketing, digital, e-com are 9 to 5s, they're not. They take up time outside of that work environment, and it takes up that mental capacity outside of the work environment. Does anybody else have any kind of questions for Jake before we kind of move on? No? Okay, brilliant. I think next we should go to kind of Mark, because I think the way I've done this is marketing and kind of on that e-com as well next. And I think it's all interrelated, because Mark, throughout your career, you've kind of gone from ops, marketing, e-com, and then industries that you've worked across kind of that FMCG space, the retail space, the pharmaceutical space, you know, the consumer packaged goods. It's an interesting journey. And I mean, how did them kind of transitions come about?
Thanks, Jay, and hi everybody. As you say, I'm Mark. I've been in FMCG now for about 20 years, and kind of like Jake, lots of smaller roles before I kind of found my area to kind of be within on my career path. And within that time, I spent time in 3 big organizations. I had 12 years at Tesco and a variety of jobs. Just as Jake was talking away, I was thinking I did 7 different jobs in 12 years at Tesco alone. I moved across to dunnhumby, which was their insight and data business that they own. They still own. That operates the club card scheme here in the UK. Unlocks shopper insights. And then the last 6.5 years, I've been at Unilever, and a few little places in between. And my time at Unilever was around digital leadership, where ultimately I was responsible for omni-channel across the whole of Unilever as a model, which, you know, fantastic opportunity. And the kind of journey Jake talked about is the one I think about. It's an industry that does take verticals and does take a very linear approach to stuff. If you're a buyer, it's really easy. You know, you're going to come in as a buying assistant, you work your way up as a commercial director, as an example. Or if you're in marketing, you come in at a lower, and you know, a good entry point, you end up becoming a marketing director, a CMO, whatever it might be. Yeah. My career path hasn't been like that. It's been really hard for me to have a very linear approach. And to be honest, I think it came through my time at Tesco. As an organization, they love to move people around to get that roundedness of people and experience. And what I learned myself during my own career was, as I tried to explain, as I interviewed for stuff, it was always hard to explain, well, why have you had so many different roles in the organization? And, you know, even recently, why, you know, you're moving around, what's the connection? And I used to describe it as eclectic, until the phrase, the Squiggly Career path came through. And for me, it comes down to something really simple. It comes down to having a really simple thread, a kind of golden thread that joins it all together. And for me, it's about seeing shoppers from as many different perspectives as I can. And in my mind, that unlocks why I've done the roles I've done, and why I've chosen to go a certain way or not, it's been a great filter. So if a role is going to give me the opportunity to see a shopper from a different perspective, so at Tesco I saw it from an international perspective, or a category one, or a corporate marketing one, and so on. At Unilever, I've been seeing it from a kind of global category perspective, and then a global business model perspective. At dunnhumby, you saw it from a different angle again, and time at in other places like Roche and others. So my career path, although it feels eclectic, it feels squiggly and wiggly, the thread that ties it together is that one singular focus around shoppers and different perspectives. And that for me joins it up, gives me the permission to go in irregular paths and take roles that might seem disjointed to the outsider, but to me it makes real sense.
I like that. I mean, it is very unique, and I suppose kind of you've worked across all the different facets, from being within the retail side to then kind of dunnhumby when you're now external, when you're kind of more on that consultative path, to then Unilever where you're brand side. And I suppose let's say for instance, when you was going for Unilever, you must have been up against people from that kind of FMCG background who'd been on that journey of digitalization already. So how did you kind of find yourself within those kind of conversations? What do you feel kind of set you apart?
I kind of come back to what Jake's just said. There's this, if you stay within a particular silo, what it does, it gives you deep expertise and knowledge in a singular space. What it doesn't give you is the breadth that a generalist will give. And I know there's a lot of talk about this kind of T-shaped career thing, where you kind of go deep, you go wide. Where I could stand out at Unilever was the fact I did have retailer experience right at the sharp end of retail, strategically and very tactically, and from a data and insight perspective. So what made me unique in the role I did was that experience prior, joined together with the big brand experience, working with the Doves of the world and so on. And that set me apart. And it also meant, because of my focus on shoppers being my ultimate passion, the driver of my own career, I could bring that into play and go, look, from this retailer's perspective, this is what you're going to experience. Here's the pushback. Here's the learning. From a data perspective, here's what you've got to think about. It's curiosity. It's about understanding. And that's what has, for me at least, made a difference with those who have been in brand development for 20 years, whatever that might be.
Yeah. So passion and bringing a different perspective to the table is kind of what set you apart from the competition. And what, I suppose for somebody who's quite early on in their career now, who wants to kind of make a change, what do you feel would open up opportunities for them? Is there certain...
It's really simple for me. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's about curiosity, and that comes in many different ways. It comes from a hunger to understand what's going on around them. Yeah. So you don't just sit in a very narrow, confined, a very blinkered view of what's going on, because especially today with the digital connectivity stuff, there's hyper connectivity just flowing left, right, and center for us. You just have to consider the role of AI and everything that all of us are doing in businesses. My business, alone. The curiosity is going to drive the hunger to understand new experiences and new forms of learning and places to learn. And that will take you on, hopefully, a path that you feel deeply passionate about. And then you have a real desire to really seek out different opportunities and capitalize on them when they arise.
And I think that is kind of crucial. Is there any other questions anybody else has got for Mark? I mean, that's brilliant. And I suppose actually one of the questions I asked Jake could be useful here as well. When you've come to hiring for your team, have you preferred people who've had that more linear, more traditional pathway where you understand their expertise, or have you preferred people with that greater breadth and knowledge, or is it dependent on the role?
There has to be a baseline of attitude. What's important for me is a really strong work ethic and the willingness to put in hard work and grit and determination, resilience, especially in the businesses that we're all dealing with, today. Lots of change, incredible shift in shopper behaviors and stuff. Then after that, it comes down to the nature of the role. There's some roles I've recruited for that have needed a very, very distinct, sharp specialism in that experience. Without that, you're not going to pass muster against, the job we have for you to do. But I do lean towards this kind of generalist view. You need to understand the interconnectivity of your role versus others, and how shoppers might perceive it. How your customers might perceive it. So there's a mix of both, I think.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So if we go to Natalie next.
Hello.
So Natalie's joining us from Barcelona, I believe.
A very sunny Barcelona. It was very cloudy a moment ago. Now I'm like, woo, let the sun shine.
Yeah,
Indeed.
I mean, we're sitting here enviously in the UK with cloud and overcast. And I think your career is quite unique, not just in terms of the locations where you worked, New York, London, Barcelona, but also kind of making that move agency to in-house, because I think it's one where people do struggle. And there's always that reluctance for, in-house teams, especially in the past, for taking somebody into that. So it'd be fascinating to kind of know more about your journey and how those moves all came about.
Sure, absolutely. Something I don't put on my LinkedIn profile or my resume is I actually started in the arts. Yeah. So in university, I studied theater, acting, and dance. And then I moved to New York City to be an actor. And I did it. I did it for 10 years. And it was incredible. It was very hard to make a living. But I don't tell this because the rest of the career is squiggly as well. So this is too long of a story usually to get into. But I think for this conversation, it's interesting. And the other thing that I think is interesting about it is that it's what has made me, I think being an artist and being a performing artist and a professional storyteller is what has made me a great brand strategist and a great marketer, and has really informed the rest of my career. It is quite hard to explain this to people, and in a job interview, like people don't want to hear that, right? But this is a really important aspect of my career, I think. And then what happened was towards the end of my performing career, I started doing international exchange programs, and I was producing them. And I really enjoyed being on the producing side and working internationally as well. Mostly I was working in the Balkans and creating like new works of theater with theater companies in like a week's time. And living in New York, where it was very international anyway, I went back to grad school and studied like digital media, culture, and international affairs. And at that intersection, it took me into working at the United Nations in the communications department, which was very, very cool, but also very boring for me. It just wasn't lively enough. It was a bit too slow. I worked for the World Bank on a research project. And that was much more exciting. I got to go to Senegal, work there. And then we had another project plan, but it was the same. It was the economic collapse of 2008. And our project was like, the funding was cut. So it was like, what am I going to do? Went to work for a Dutch foundation, philanthropic foundation briefly. But then I got Razorfish, digital ad agency, recruited me to do on a research side of marketing, to do a project. And I really enjoyed agency side. And I just kind of had an in, like a former classmate actually from undergrad, like got me into that role. And I was working in closed customer communities doing research. I was like, this is really cool. But then because I was a community manager, that got me into social media in the very earliest days of social media. And then I just kind of like was in the right place at the right time. Being at the bleeding edge of social, I was like at the launch at South by Southwest when Twitter launched. I even knew MySpace back in the day, right? Like I was helping brands, like some Unilever brands, actually get on social and figure out like, how do we do this thing called social media? How do we talk directly to our customers when everyone can hear it? And how do we take a corporate voice and sound like relatable to our customers and then deal with all the problems they have like publicly? And because I figured that stuff out, I went very quickly into strategy. And then I just kind of stayed in agencies, like in different roles. I had my own entrepreneurial thing. I did independent consulting, and I helped agencies set up their social media department, like VaynerMedia, early days, a few PR firms and MRY, a brand consulting firm even. So I really worked in branding all of that time. Like I thought I was working in marketing, but it turned out that I was working in branding all that time. I was helping figure out how brands could be relatable and then how they could communicate. And, we called it social media marketing and we had to do all the activities, which was, all of the kind of engagement, customer engagement and the measurement and the, growth, all of that. But then what happened was social went pay to play. And I had to learn advertising. And all of a sudden I was working in marketing and advertising and even got involved on like the full omni-channel campaign side in agencies while I was leading the social media department. I got to really learn the ad world. That was cool. So I became really a generalist. Like Mark, I always think it's really interesting too, this like general versus like vertical, like you go deeper, you go broad, but I kind of like did both at different times. And now I'm quite broad, but as I'm going back, like I'm like analyzing my career and I'm like, I am really a brand strategist at my core. Like I can do whatever you need me to do, but it's really what I think where I add the most value. So anyway, working in agencies for ages and I loved it. It's such a good time. And then working out of London was my last one though, at the Social Element, and Brexit happened and they were just like, we lost, we don't know what to do with our European clients. It was a bummer because I really loved that job. But I understood. And then from there, I helped start up an agency here in Barcelona, an AR VR agency. And I was hired to like lead the marketing function, but then I ended up doing like the commercial strategy and helping figure out like what service are we selling, because you have to know that before you can market something. You have to figure out what it is that you're marketing. And then from there, the NFT explosion of 2021. And I was like, I'd always loved blockchain technology. And I was like, okay, I think I could find my way in here. And I just found a company here in Barcelona willing to take a chance on me to enter the Web3 industry. And for the last 2 years, that's where I've been. I ended up being a crypto marketer on accident. Like I never wanted to work in crypto. It just kind of happened that blockchain tech is still very reliant. I mean, if you have a decentralized platform, a decentralized technology, you need a decentralized currency. So now I'm working in crypto marketing, but I'm also like, I've just left my last role and I'm also thinking maybe I want to move back into like be in-house. I love the in-house brand side, but maybe move back into something that's more adopted in the market, less emerging tech and more like the tech that's actually adopted and really work directly with consumers. Cause I love that direct B2C marketing and brand stuff.
Lovely. And I mean, quite a few points really stood out to me, but what you kind of mentioned about early on in your career and having somebody in your network who actually kind of helped you make that initial move, it kind of relates into kind of Ellis and Tupper and what they're saying about kind of leveraging network, especially if you want to kind of pivot, because without having that advocacy, it can be difficult to actually make that first move. And then also being early in social, because where I used to recruit in social, going back 7, 8, almost 9 years ago now, it was very different to the role now, because now it's more segmented. You'll have a separate community manager, a separate designer, a separate strategist, a separate researcher, whereas in the past it was one person doing all of those across all the different platforms. So, I mean, do you feel the role itself still requires more generalists who understand how everything kind of interconnects, or do you feel it does require people with more diverse specialisms within each of those kind of separate areas?
That's a really good question. And look, I think it helps to have, well, first of all, I do want to say, I agree with Mark on the curiosity point. I think that's the absolute most important aspect in a person, and it's in a coworker, but especially when you're young and you're learning, right? So I want to make that point. And I still want to answer your question that I think it does help to be able to go, okay, in marketing, marketing is at least 5 or 7 different types of brains, different types of skills and expertise and ways of thinking. And it's amazing we could find someone who can be an analyst and be creative and be, a really good writer and good at communicating, and maybe have some design skills, and maybe also be technical, and also be able to figure out how to automate stuff, and can adopt AI just like that, right? But most of us are going to have be stronger in this area or that area. And so I think over the course of a career, just to be really curious and to be learning what your colleagues are doing, to be challenging yourself, maybe asking your manager, or even just taking a leap into other areas and learning other things. But I do think it helps from a leadership and management perspective, when I have team members who I can go, I know that person can do this. I can put that person on this job and it will get done. It'll get done well, yeah. Sorry, we've been asked.
And it does seem to be kind of common threads about kind of that attitude, capability, that kind of wanting to go above and beyond, the curiosity. And it seems to be kind of, all three speakers so far have kind of mentioned similar themes in terms of when they've hired, what they've kind of looked for, and what's kind of stood out to them. I suppose then, in terms of with actually kind of making that move and getting that first chance into going into a VR agency as well, I mean, was that a difficult conversation? Because, was there slight reluctance on their part at first, or was there that mutual synergy where you both could see the value?
There's absolute mutual synergy. I met one of the co-founders at a dinner party. Again, personal network is huge. I mean, probably 75% of my jobs have come from personal network, but I don't mean close friends. I mean a friend of a friend, somebody I met in LinkedIn, someone I met at a dinner party, right? These sort of these synergies happen if you're open to it and out there looking for it. And also talking about what you love, right? And here in Spain, in New York, the first conversation everyone ever had was what do you do? But in Barcelona, it's kind of rude to ask someone, what do you do? It's just a cultural thing, right? But I like to talk. I do like to talk about technology. I like to talk about right. So starting these kind of conversations wherever you are can be helpful in your career. But yeah, that one was, we were at a dinner party and we exactly started talking about our career paths. And sort of how our experience in agencies, and how we both wanted to create this other kind of agency. And at the end of the conversation, it was well, by the way, I think I might be starting up this agency. And we think so similarly on so many things. And if I do, I'll get in touch with you. And half a year later, he got in touch with me. I hadn't seen him since that dinner party. We had that moment where we clicked, and we exchanged, there was this swirling of ideas, and that it stuck in both of our brains. Wow, we could be collaborators someday.
That's it. And it's, I suppose, if you don't network, if you don't make the most of these opportunities, if you don't actually talk about what you're passionate about, these opportunities just won't be handed to you on a plate.
Absolutely. Yeah, there always has to be this willingness to put yourself out there and speak about what you know about. But I encourage everyone to maintain curiosity and ask questions, because that makes, that's so much more appealing.
That's it. Does anybody else have any questions?
Just a quick observation from me. It sounds like your thread has always been creativity all the way through. And it's the filter. If this is going to allow me to be creative, be innovative, that's where I'll lean to. And that seems to be really consistent as you've gone.
Thank you for saying that. It's funny because I'm a bit analytical and, and on the strategy side as well. But I completely agree with you. And I love how you said golden thread. I'm going to take that. That golden thread is what pulls it all together. And sometimes it takes a few years to realize that, right? But when it dawns on you, it's wow, that's what it is. Yeah. Thanks for saying, Mark.
Mark's going to be trademarking that after this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so David, quite an exciting career back into that e-commerce space, and very, very different, because you started off in buying, then category management, and then kind of transitioning to e-com. I think what was quite interesting as well, number 21 out of 20 for the Safeway graduate program.
Yep. So hi everyone, David here. So I started off in the very traditional way, left university on the milk rounds trying to find a job, applied at Safeway, 24,000 applicants for 20 roles, and I was number 21. They didn't give me a graduate job, but they did give me a supply chain job, which was great. And then I spent the first sort of 10 years of my career moving around strategically. So I recognised waiting in one company to try and get promoted was the hard way of doing it. So I went from Safeway to Best Foods, Unilever, then Safeway and finance. And at this point, I was thinking about wanting to move into buying. So I managed to become a buyer at Safeway, spent 5 years doing that. And then realised that actually buying wasn't really me. I'm much more collaborative. So I took a career break, came back and moved into category management, worked for MilkLink, went down to Cornwall to Ginsters, became category controller, then moved to Kerry Foods, which Ginsters weren't very happy about, and category controller there. And at that point, I was looking at category director sort of level jobs. And I paused and went, is that the career I want? And I was looking at what the directors were doing, and they're all working 18-hour weeks. And I thought, balance of life for me, that's not where I want to go. None of them look happy. They all look stressed all the time. So I thought, let's try a different way. Let's go freelance. So since then, I've spent the past 12 years contracting and consulting. And I started off in category management, my first contract at Novartis. And while I was there, I kind of noticed that all the marketing teams were spending loads of money online, but not commercializing it. So I kind of made a presentation to the board, the UK board at Novartis, and said, why don't you extend my contract and let me see if I can do something in this e-commerce space for you. And I spent 6 months doing that, then moved into the Novartis European team, then the global team. And then since then, I've been contracting on global stuff, delivering web, app, e-commerce, direct consumer, and all the way from strategy to operations. And actually, that sort of first 17 years in the FMCG side, moving around a lot, having a very squiggly career, to take your term, Jay. Actually, it really has left me in a place where my point of view is keep things simple and just look at the commercial output, because if you're looking at the numbers and looking if it's going to deliver what the business needs, yes, you have to have a shopper point of view. You have to make sure you've got product fit and all the rest of it. But actually, breaking this stuff down to simple stuff is often the backbone of making things work for businesses. And it's that kind of simple approach that seems to be delivering and has done for the past 12 years. Yeah. So I know that was a rattle through, but I think it's something that Natalie said earlier on, which was having the confidence and the nerve to go and speak to people, to go and push for what you want. And I mean, through that career, it's normally taken 2 or 3 years to pivot from being a buyer to moving into category management to moving into freelance. They're strategic decisions that take time, but there's never a barrier if you're wanting to do something. You just have to figure out what the journey is to get where you want to go. And that's, I mean, you talked around young people and what would be the advice. And it's having that confidence and patience to move yourself into the position to get where you want to. It may not happen immediately, but you can get there if you want.
Yeah. And you was very intentional about your moves and very strategic, as you've kind of mentioned. And I mean, I suppose the question in terms of kind of when you pitched, e-com initially, did you have to do some research into it beforehand? Did you kind of start building up your knowledge about that sector? Or how did that kind of conversation come about, and how did you kind of manage to get the buying for the pitch?
So it's a little bit of both. So my wife at the time was actually, we had a business running behind the scenes. We were pioneering e-safety for young people online back in late 90s. That I mean, even now, some of that content still floats around. But that really got me into understanding the impact of the digital world that was coming at us. And then when I saw what was going on, I then took the time outside of my day job to build a plan, build a presentation, find out what the opportunities were. It's a case of putting that into a language that people will react to. So, I moved it into from e-commerce conversation to pounds and pence. Yeah. And it's when I started showing that there's a monetary value, that's when people went, oh, okay, now we understand there's an opportunity. Yeah, let's move ahead. And it's always about positioning the argument to the right person in the right way.
And then I suppose kind of making that adaptation as well, because it's a whole new career and you've kind of worked with big reputable businesses since. So and you've kind of moved across industries as well. Did you find any kind of barriers or any kind of reluctance during those kind of moves since you've kind of started that e-commerce pathway?
I do apologise, Jay. The sound's coming through a bit messy this side. So I think you were asking, were there issues? So actually, can you repeat the question? Apologies.
Yeah, was there any issues kind of moving between kind of employers into your contracts without having worked in particular industries in the past?
No, every business has got its own problems, own set of challenges. And it's to be honest, it's one of the things I've enjoyed most about being freelance is the turning up and having to learn to adapt and pivot really, really quickly. You know, the first 3 or 4 weeks of any contract are normally quite hectic, just getting your feet under the table and getting the direction of travel. But that's the buzz of it for me.
And I suppose avoiding that 80-hour week, did it actually work out?
From time to time.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Right. All right, brilliant. Is there actually, David, just before, is there any kind of key takeaway that you'd kind of advise somebody who's looking at taking their career in a different direction, apart from the strategic moves and kind of being very intentional about it? Is there something, you know, like, did you have a passion for this area already, or what would your kind of guidance be for somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought about my career in terms of what's going to fulfill me, what's going to make me happy, because when I've got a passion or an interest in something, it's no longer work. And, you know, having jumped around a number of different functions, you know, I've recognized now that some functions suit me better than others. And it's taken me a long time to understand who I am, to understand what I'm going to be best positioned at. And I think, gosh, I sound very new age, man. It's been about being self and all that, but it's a little bit of that. I mean, buying wasn't a good fit for me. Strategy work, category management, all that sort of stuff, that fits with me perfectly. So there's an element of having to be true with yourself and figure out what you want out of life, and then trying to find out what fits with that, and then figure out what is the journey gets you from where you are to where you're going to be, and be prepared for the fact that it doesn't have to be a straight line.
That's brilliant.
It's, you know, there's an element of faith and trust, but you know, if you stick with something, if you have a goal and an objective, there is no reason why you can't get there, so long as it's within practical reality of, you know, your capabilities. You know, I can't be a rocket scientist.
You can't be a rocket scientist, but unless you're strategic and spend the next 2-3 years planning on it.
Well, you know, give me a bottle of fairy liquid and maybe I can be, but yeah. No, it's all about picking your battles, but having an objective and moving towards it. I think it's a good thing to have in life.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, David. Mags.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How's everyone doing? I love what David just said about not having a straight career, because nothing about my career path has been straight at all.
Yeah,
so I sort of like feel really attached to that.
Yeah, because industry-wise, you've done e-commerce, finance, real estate, beauty, luxury,
automotive,
agencies.
Yes, I work with agencies. I work in corporate, B2B, B2C. I've just been everywhere.
Been everywhere. And what I found really interesting, and I think a good place to start with, is from your post yesterday about your first manager in agency.
Yeah, so that was a funny thing. And actually, I work, and Natalie, we need to connect because we both worked for TSE, for the social element, a few time ago. Yes, which was very funny. I've always worked freelance. Just to have a little bit of a background, I'm originally from Argentina. I always knew I wanted to study comms, went to study advertising at uni. Had to pay for it by myself, of course, because my parents couldn't pay for it. So I ended up doing paid internships. I had to work while also studying. I was just really eager and keen and just wanted to do everything and be everywhere at the same time. So I've always freelanced this way and passed through internships, but I've never officially worked for an agency. And there was a time where my boss actually just said to me, well, to think, actually, I almost didn't hire you because you didn't have that agency experience in your CV. And she didn't mean this in any kind of like a shady or mean way at all. She's one of the best bosses I've ever had. But it also made me think of the fact like, oh, I don't have that in my CV. The fact that it's just like I have a agency experience is also limited a lot of where I work or how I work, which I think is very interesting. You just have to put all your life, all your experience in a CV, and that somehow needs to represent how curious you are and what are your vibes and your energy, basically, and how you go through life. It's very hard to do that and just go and apply for a job being like, hey, this is everything I am, and just fit everything. It's just a 2-pager.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It is a skill in itself, and I do help people with that. But I mean, just in terms of kind of your journey as well, and kind of, you know, moving countries, the different roles you've had, and kind of consulting with different businesses. I mean, how has that journey kind of come about, and how did that kind of move from Argentina to the UK take place?
Oh, that was mainly because of work. So luckily, I already had a really good English base. My father was American. Plus, I already had basically the language done, and I was just trying to apply for different things in life, isn't it? Just sort of like went into. I work in Argentina with international companies at the time, and I was actually really keen on understanding how a communication can change so much moving from country to country, even if you do speak the same language. Natalie can probably say this, and I love the fact that she said, well, in the USA is different to how we actually Barcelona talks about work. And basically almost all Latin America talks Spanish, and yet you need to adapt your communications a lot because how they work culturally is completely different to how an Argentinian works culturally. Even we all speak Spanish, we know that, but still it's different. Yeah. So I ended up working with international companies there, and I really got a keen into understanding those cultural differences. And somehow work just took me to the UK, where someone just said like, hey, like, I know you have international experience, want to come here and help us with our European market? And I just went like, yes. The thing is, sometimes when opportunities happen, you just need to say yes, and you will learn about it. There are a lot of transferable skills, even if like we're talking about this linear path where you actually get into a company and you have to be an intern, then an executive, and then a manager, and then move to someone else. Sometimes it's just, luckily for me, it didn't happen that way because I'm very curious and how it always worked for me. I started with advertising and actually went into social media, then ended up working in email marketing, and then ended up working in strategy, and then just changed so much because having that background in comms allowed me to understand and see how the customer journey was. So I ended up starting with social media, but then I realized for email marketing, we were doing something completely different. And I was just too curious and a sort of a pain in the ass. So I would reach out to the email person and be like, hey, we're seeing this in social. Why is this different from email? And then just like actually connecting with different departments and basically just connecting all this strategy and making sure that the customer journey was seamless for everyone. So yeah, I'm just really curious and just nosy, basically.
I think that curiosity is that kind of golden thread throughout the conversation as well.
It is clearly, and actually it's just the vibes. We need the vibes to work in marketing.
Yeah. And then, I mean, also kind of, getting that consistency in the messaging and making sure that customers kind of getting that exceptional experience and kind of moving from social into that CRM space. I suppose it's kind of broadened out your knowledge of the broader kind of content space as well.
Absolutely. I've also done content marketing, strategy. I work in campaigns, I work in events, but it was basically just my curiosity being, okay, what are we doing in this space? Is this something that I can bring to social? Is this something that we can do collaboratively? So it is great. I ended up being a generalist, right? Because I do have all those marketing aspects and this experience. And for some companies, I'm a unicorn. And for some companies, just look at me and saying like, you're just a weirdo. You don't have 5 years of experience in my industry or in this market or in this position, so I don't want you. And for some of them, it's great. I don't know, it's completely different. I'm finding the right company for you or working with the right people. I just feel like it's sort of dating right now when you just have to have the right vibes and the right energy to match.
So when you're kind of job hunting yourself, or have done so in the past, was it kind of more, would you be leveraging your network? Would you just be applying for roles, looking to have conversations and finding where there's that kind of mutual alignment and where there's that kind of, I'd say kind of, they've got the right personality and the alignment of goals and values as well as just the role?
I love this question. So right now, I feel you need a little bit of everything to get the right projects and the right approach and right connections, right? So a few years ago, perhaps you sort of like did manage to get your CV in this 2-pager and somehow pass the AI recruiter, what the AI recruiters use just to, you know, get into the first stage. And once you do get into the first stage, yes, it's sort of like getting the vibes and the right experience. Now I just feel like it's sort of impossible to get exactly what a person is about in that CV, and you do need to get to know them. And it's very important right now to do sort of work with your personal branding on LinkedIn specifically, and post what you're about and what you're interested in, and also get those connections. Since most of the work that I get right now is just because I tell people, hey, I work for international companies, this is my expertise. I specialize in doing social media activations because I love actually just creating different things and specifically working with brands that want to stand out and do something different. So by putting myself out there, by talking about this, by building my experience and networking is one of the best things that I could do in the past few years, because it did help me connect with a lot of interesting people, and it did help me connect with the right brands and the right campaigns.
So it's allowed you to kind of build those relationships and to kind of open up them opportunities for you. So are you quite intentional about the people you're kind of connecting with, or is it more intentional about the content you're posting?
For me, it's both.
Yeah.
So there is a certain thing that is specifically working in social media or working in just marketing in general. Like, it's nothing new, but there are still certain key basic stuff that some people or brands don't understand about social media, or what organic social media does, or what actually having a presence helps you with. Basically, I'm not going to pull names, right? But most of the companies I started working with, it's just kind of like, oh, we need to be in social because our competition is there and other people are there. It's kind of like, yes, but also no at the same time. You need to have a strategy. There's a lot of benefits that actually can bring from actually being in socials, but people still don't completely understand them, which is fun to say.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it's quite unique, and it's kind of, quite aligned to what a lot of people need to do nowadays in terms of kind of making sure that they've got the right presentation. Because one thing as a recruiter, one of my pet peeves is I get a CV and I look on the LinkedIn profile, because that's what we do as recruiters. And the LinkedIn profile is different from their CV. Different experiences, different job titles, different dates. And it's that kind of inconsistency, which, you know, as a kind of external partner, it's a red flag on my side, because if there's no link between what you've now presented for that role in terms of what your social profile says, how can I, in good conscience, put you forward to a business?
Yes.
So,
yes, it's also, I think, something that we've fallen into the industry, where having these AI tools actually to help us vet if we are aligned to a position or not, also made us change, also forced people to actually change a lot of the job title, because I always work with startups and founders or multinationals. And usually what I do, like if I actually add that to a CV, I'll send you an essay. It's not going to fit in a 2-pager. And I do understand how people actually do need to adapt that to sort of like represent their experience, because if I have to add all the things that I've done, from paid advertising to organic to strategy to email marketing, it's just not going to fit.
It'll be 5 pages. No, I get that.
Just a book. I'll send you my book.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions before I kind of ask some questions that we've had from the audiences? No?
I just wanted to add one point to what David said, how I think a really good point, how it's important to like do what you love. Like, I mean, I don't know. I was raised by like, well, if it's not fun, it's not work, you know? And, but then like, I've changed that story, and it's like, I want to love my work, or I want to feel passionate about it and interested in it. I want to read books on the side about it, right? And the other thing that I've experienced over a long career is like that changes because we change. We go through different phases in our lives. Like when I had a kid, I was like a different person for this first 6 years of my daughter's life, right? And so like be okay, like go for what you love, and also be okay with that changing. And I think that's what leads many of us to squiggly careers. And I think most satisfying careers are squiggly because we change and we have to follow our passions.
As you kind of adapt, you begin to kind of evolve yourself.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the questions that's come up in the comments. The first one is from JD for Mark, and he's asked, in which sector do you think brand building is more exciting? Consumer durable space, e.g. selling a tower fan, or FMCG, selling sunscreen kind of product? How would you answer that, Mark?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes down to the curiosity. The excitement's going to come down to what's the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And how can you find creative ways to do that? And I appreciate there's a difference between a product like shampoo that you'll buy and use, within 2 weeks versus a TV. The excitement then is how can I really serve that product to the shopper to meet their particular need at that point in time? And what's all the creative ways I can do that offline and online? That for me is where the excitement comes from. It'd be lovely to go and work on some high-end cameras or high-end sort of consumer tech right now, because I think that's an exciting space. But at the same time, I love working with face soap and shampoo.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just in terms of that kind of extension to the question, it's kind of about that one-off long-term sale, or that one where you're selling the product maybe 3, 4, or more frequently throughout the year. And do you feel that brand building is easier for one of those over the other?
It's hard for me to say. Maybe Jake will have a view on this again with that brand building side too. I suspect it's a different type of audience for a start and a different need. What we talk about internally is about being clear on shopper missions and the needs that you've got to address. And then the product is there to serve that need. So I think the complexity comes from how complex it is to understand what's the problem they're trying to solve. And a part of the core of marketing is to really understand that shopper segment, that customer segment deeply, intensely, that you can then tailor the offer to them in the right way in whatever touch point they experience the brand, from consideration all the way through to purchase and loyalty. So dare I say it, I think it's going to be horses for courses.
Yeah, and that does make sense. You got to find your own passion. We've had a question from Nick Duke, and it's kind of opened up for everybody. So from a generalist perspective with specialist tendencies, it's getting harder to be found in a market that feels like it's looking for specialists. Other than going to the right parties with Natalie, do you have any other advice on standing out in a crowded market? Go to parties with Natalie.
Yeah, no, I'd kind of agree about the going to parties with Natalie. It's taking every opportunity to meet with anyone that you can for any reason. It doesn't matter if it's someone else's event, someone else's Christmas party, someone else's breakfast talking thing. That's where you meet people, and people hire because they meet people. They typically, I don't hire off a piece of paper. The piece of paper comes to me as an introduction. Once I've met the person, then I'm making a decision. But however, if I've met someone in a social situation or in a professional situation, they put themselves forward in a particular way, that's, I don't care what their piece of paper says.
And do you feel it's different for kind of small and medium-sized businesses to kind of bigger corporates? Because I suppose with the corporates, then HR will then get involved and there'll be a longer process to it, whereas small and medium-sized businesses can at times be more agile with the decision making.
Mark will probably know this, but I think in the bigger corporates, they've got boxes that they need to fill. and you just need to have ticked the right criteria, and then you're pushed to the front of that queue, and then there's someone to approve that hire. In the smaller businesses, I think it is very much driven on personality attributes and capability.
Yeah,
I'd also add, I like people with an opinion. I like people who are known or famous for something, for want of a better description, because it means that you've distilled your knowledge or your passion, your interest into a perspective or a point of view. So I've tried, if you see me on LinkedIn, I have a particular perspective, or I've got a passion about omnichannel, for example. I'm known for that. I was known internally for that. I'm known outside for it. So to stand out, I think, without trying to sound specialist, if you're known for something, if you've got a view, I've got a passion about supply chain or a passion around, learning and development, make that your thing. Make sure that you've got all the skills behind it to give you the breadth and depth of things, but have one thing that people know you well for.
And yeah, it's about building your reputation, because it can take longer to build your reputation, but once it's built, then people start kind of approaching you rather than you approaching them. We've had a question from Idris Taiwo, and he said, in Africa, there are a few universities that teach marketing at an undergraduate level. What advice do you have for Africans in terms of global certifications? Sorry, I can't pronounce that. Certifications for early entry tech marketers.
I'm wondering if there's lots of universities do lots of free courses. I think Harvard have unlocked a whole load of their, or is it MIT? One of the two have unlocked like loads of their graduate level courses. It might be worth considering. There's a lot of talk around Mark Ritson's kind of global courses that he do, the mini MBAs. All the people I've known have been on it, have raved about it.
Yeah.
I think these kind of industry courses and general access stuff gives you a great global view, and often they're free, or if they're not, they're usually manageable costs in some cases. That might be a way through it.
Yeah, I think Mark Ritson, like, that his reputation, he's already kind of built that, and he's known for delivering fantastic qualifications already. Magali, sorry, it's true that it's harder to get past the ATS conversational stage, so 100% traditional job searching methods should not be applying in today's market. There's another one about the CV and ATS challenge, which quite a few people are finding it's quite difficult for them to kind of navigate. So is there, applying for any roles, would you suggest people amend their CV and tailor it towards that job? It's at times something I've advised, or how would you kind of tell somebody to navigate that?
I guess it depends if you're applying directly to a corporation or if you're applying with a recruiter. For example, like you, Jay, in that case, I would rather actually have a talk with you and go through all my experience and getting your recommendations, because there's a different relationship than just sending a CV that needs to be screened out.
Yeah.
So it depends if you're starting for a startup. I would say, like, yes, definitely just get as much information as you can. Just add your personality. If you can add your links to your profile, do that. And if you're working with a recruiter, do the same. But if you're going for corporate, just you might need to amend your CV a little bit, because there are certain things that HR needs to clock out, as Mark just said.
Yeah. And as a recruiter, usually if there's parts that aren't included on the CV, we would tell somebody to include it. And again, if there's parts included on CV that don't feel relevant or pertinent to the role, usually we'd tell somebody to kind of remove that. This is an interesting question. So I can't see who's asked it. It just says LinkedIn user. But as career squigglers, how might you, as hiring managers, persuade others in your team who are more risk averse to also consider someone who doesn't have an exact match in experience?
I had that once where I really wanted to hire someone for my social media team, and then the hiring director had a completely different view on it, basically. And I think it's something to discuss a lot with the rest of your team, exactly what you're looking for, but also there is a match that needs to happen with the experience of the job that you're looking for and the person that's coming in. Specifically, if you're working in marketing, just because you posted a few videos on, I don't know, YouTube doesn't mean you can actually run a corporate YouTube account. Or if you haven't actually the time to train this person, you need someone with more experience, someone with less experience. It is definitely something to talk with the rest and actually just build your case and why do you think this person matches all the things that you need. Let's just consider that. And if you need an extra chat with this person to be like, hey, this is exactly what we need. Are you happy to do that? Or do you think you're going to do something else? Like we're still humans, right? We are hiring another person. We need to be sure that they have the curiosity. They actually can stay in the company. So you don't have to recruit in 3 months' time, right? But basically just talk with people and just align with the rest why you think this is a great match for you or your team.
Yeah, and I think this is it. As a recruiter, I mean, when I speak with hiring managers, it's always about qualifying what's desired and what's essential for the role, because sometimes things that are listed as essential are more a desire than, relevant to that person who's actually going to come in and successfully do the job. And it's about kind of really qualifying what they actually need for that person to come in. And it's more than just skills and experience. It is about personality. For a permanent hire, you want to make sure they're right for the team, that they're going to kind of match your management style as well. Because if you like to kind of really know what your team's doing, strong in terms of communication, and you've got somebody who wants to be autonomous and just do their own thing, it's not going to work. And likewise, if you need somebody who needs a lot of management and guidance, and you're somebody who lets the team kind of go do their thing and then make mistakes and then kind of speak to them after, again, it's not going to work, because that person's going to feel stressed and overwhelmed and not know when they can ask you for that support. I hope that helps. Gabriel has asked a question. So from Rock SEO, into the mix for job seekers in this hard times, how about embedding a 2 to 4 minute Loom video about yourself and the role onto the CV? Any hiring managers, would you like those? If somebody had a video that came into the CV, would you want that, or would you want that as a separate part of the hiring process? How would you guys feel about that?
I think anything that anyone does to elevate their personality, their skill set, whatever, is a benefit. Like, we're all putting our LinkedIn address on there, which has got a whole bunch of content that we've created at some point along the way. As far as being marketers, I'm surprised that people haven't actually started saying, can I have your Instagram or your TikTok handle so I can see what you do there, because that's just another extension of your creativity. So I think that would be a good idea. And if I had a pile of applicants and there were ones with videos on that were a couple of minutes, I'd probably watch them, and it would make me make a pretty quick decision.
Yeah.
I have specific feedback on that, because we asked in one of my jobs when I was a hiring manager, we asked people to send a 30-second overview. It's tricky, guys, because I have to say I really try to not be a judgmental person, but when I'm hiring, I have to assess the person. I was assessing them based on all kinds of things, like their eyes, like where their eyes were, how coherent their speech. And I was like, we decided not to do it again. It's like, I think it's better if I just talk to the person right away, because there's something that happens when we're making, even if it's through a video screen, we're making eye contact, we're asking each other questions, how we respond to each other. I don't know. I tried it. It went kind of weird. Went in a weird direction. If you're really confident in this video and you think this is the best way for you to convey something you can't get through in your resume, try it. Yeah. But yeah, this was my experience.
I've heard mixed reviews, and this is from candidates as well, because some candidates are really comfortable. There's some set questions for them and they can go answer the questions, and that's submitted as part of their application. And there's others who they feel a little bit self-conscious being on video. You know, they don't know who's going to see it. It's being asked a question and they can't see a response to know, oh, should I tweak my answer slightly? What's that kind of connection? How is this being interpreted? So from my experience, it has been kind of mixed reviews, and there's other people who've really kind of loved it and, you know, really kind of embraced, you know, okay, yep, I know exactly how I'm going to answer these questions. Boom, 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 submit the answers, and they progress. And on the other side, I've had feedback from a client who's actually said, like, part of this video, sometimes these videos go wrong, and it's about seeing how that person actually overcomes, you know, the difficulty in that, and how they kind of recover, because it gives an insight into their personality and how they can kind of, you know, take on tough challenges as well.
I think it depends. I think it can be a double-edged sword, basically. It can be great to get to know someone's personality before you actually have a call with them. Yeah. But also at the same time, just because a person will actually like sent a really great video, it doesn't mean that they can do the job that you're asking them for. And it also adds a lot of unconscious bias into how you look at this person and the person that you're hiring for. So I guess it can help. It depends. Could be a win, could be a lose.
Yeah. And unconscious bias is a whole different subject. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Sorry that we've kind of overrun slightly on time as well. I know some people have asked if this is going to be available as they couldn't make the time slot. So as long as there's no objections for me to kind of put this onto maybe YouTube and embed it on the website, I mean, would everybody be happy with that?
Yeah,
totally fine.
Yeah. And it should still be available on LinkedIn afterwards as well. And thank you, everybody, for your fantastic contributions.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you,
Anything anyone wants to leave things on?
Curiosity. Meet people, go out there and meet people.
Personal branding, networking, get yourselves out there.
Don't be afraid to be squiggly. Run with the squiggly.
Get the golden thread.
Totally. Keep the golden thread there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody, so much, and have a brilliant rest of your days.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jay.
Bye.
Cheers, bye.